Chosen ones, stop right now. This word is carved for you alone, a divine message written by God Himself, meant to cut through the distractions of your life and awaken your soul. Heaven is speaking, and this moment is no coincidence. You are not here by chance. God placed this truth in your path because He sees you, He knows you, and He has a purpose so deep it will overturn everything you thought you understood. A transformation is coming, one that will rewrite your story and ignite your spirit with His glory. Stay close, because this is your hour to hear what has been reserved for you alone. Your pulse may be racing, or maybe you sit in quiet stillness, wondering why this word feels like it's calling your name. That's because it is. God has been watching through every storm, every tear, every moment you felt invisible. He has seen the battles no one else could imagine. And now He declares, enough. The burden you've carried, the doubts that whispered against you, the fears that tried to chain you, those end here. You are not just another wandering soul. You are chosen, marked with divine assignment, destined to walk a path lit with God's radiant fire. If this resonates in your spirit, pause now, like this video, and type 77 in the comments to declare your readiness for what God is about to release. Think about the times you questioned your worth, the nights when the world tried to bury your light under noise and chaos. Yet here you are, still shining, still standing, still chosen. What if I told you the silence they mocked was the very place God forged your crown? What if I told you that your hidden fire, the one they tried to bury, has now become the flame that breaks every chain they placed on you? Stay until the end, because today the fire you carried in secret will be revealed. Number 1, the silence they misread. They thought your silence meant surrender, but they never saw the weight of heaven resting over you. In the nights when you spoke nothing, God was engraving His words upon your spirit. Isaiah 30 verse 15 says, "In quietness and trust is your strength," and that strength terrified them more than if you had shouted in their faces. They wanted you loud, desperate, reactive, because then they could dismiss you as weak. But when you stood silent, they felt judged by something greater than themselves. They whispered that you were broken, but it was in that very quiet that your spirit was being welded to eternal authority. Comment, "I seal this word in light," if you know they misread your silence, and stay with me, because what was hidden in the silence is about to rise in fire. There are nights when a dream returns again and again, almost like a whisper circling back until you cannot ignore it. In that dream you are standing in a room full of noise, yet you do not speak, and your silence bends the atmosphere more than any shout could. That dream was never random. It was the image of your soul learning to hold power without needing performance. Every time you chose stillness when the world demanded your reaction, heaven etched its signature deeper across your spirit. The silence they mocked was not the absence of words, but the presence of weight, a sacred gravity pulling you closer to who you really are. They never saw the invisible scrolls being written upon your heart in those moments when you looked defeated. What looked like emptiness was in truth an altar where God Himself leaned close to mark you. Think of the times you sat alone, confused about why your voice seemed swallowed while everyone else's echoed loudly. You looked at friends who thrived in noise, who found validation in constant movement, and you wondered why stillness wrapped itself around you like a cloak you did not ask for. They called you withdrawn, they called you weak, and sometimes you even believed them. Yet deep inside there was a stirring, a pulse that told you your silence was not emptiness, but preparation. You felt things deeply others brushed off as nothing, and that sensitivity often isolated you. It wasn't weakness, it was the antenna of your spirit picking up signals meant only for the chosen. They ridiculed the very thing that marked you as different, because they could not bear the weight of what you carried unseen. What if every rejection was never an accident? but a pattern in a divine architecture designed long before you could see its lines. Isaiah once recorded God's voice saying, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you." Jeremiah 1 verse 5. And that truth is no less real in your story. The silence you endured was part of a sacred blueprint. They could not hear what was being written, but it was always there. The times you felt dismissed were actually chapters of consecration, though you did not yet know it. Like Joseph thrown into the pit, they misread his silence as abandonment, but heaven was setting the stage for elevation. The same hands that stripped him of his coat could never touch the dream engraved in his spirit. So too, the chains they thought would bind you were only the frame around the prophecy waiting to unfold. You may remember sudden moments that made no sense, flashes of knowing that pierced the ordinary day, deja vu that clung to you, whispers in the night you tried to dismiss, or chills that ran down your spine when nothing visible explained them. They were not coincidences. They were early signals that your silence was alive with movement. God speaks sometimes in fire, sometimes in thunder, but Elijah discovered his truest voice in a gentle whisper. 1 Kings 19 verse 12. That whisper has always been your strength, though the world despised it. The unease you felt in their company was not paranoia, it was discernment. When you said nothing, they felt exposed, because your silence mirrored back the shadows they tried to hide. There is a strange peace that comes when you realize you were not imagining any of this. The times your body warned you, the times your heart tightened without reason, the way silence felt heavy yet alive, all of it was real. They said you overthought. They said you were dramatic. But your intuition was the quiet lantern lighting your path in the dark. God was never training you to argue with their lies. He was teaching you to withstand them in silence until your authority became unshakable. In that hiddenness, your soul grew teeth sharper than any word you could have spoken. What looked to them like passivity was endurance beyond human measure, and what they dismissed as weakness has become your clearest confirmation. Remember this now. You are not becoming something new. You are remembering something ancient. Underneath the noise of their opinions, the real you was never erased. The identity buried under years of misjudgment is rising again like a seed pressed beneath soil, waiting for spring. In silence, God whispered your true name, one they could never pronounce because it was not given by human lips. The ache of being misunderstood was not a curse. It was the womb of revelation. Archetypes of prophets, warriors, and kings carried that same hidden mark. Your journey is not strange. It is the continuation of an eternal pattern. The silence they misread is now revealing the truth you were always meant to embody. Now comes the first activation. You must see that your sensitivity was never weakness, but your shield and your compass. What they called fragility is in fact your spiritual antenna, able to read the unseen currents of life with precision. Do not despise the tears, the long nights, the times you felt every wound sharper than others did. Those were your training grounds, teaching you to interpret the invisible. When you stood without response, the silence gathered weight until it became thunder in heaven's court. That thunder now answers for you, declaring you are chosen. Embrace it, because your inner fire is already breaking the chains they believed would silence you forever. So here is where I leave you with both peace and a challenge. The fact that you are here proves this was never coincidence. It was an appointment written into your days before you understood it. Every moment of quiet you carried has been building toward this very recognition. They misread your silence, but heaven never did. Comment, I carry the silence as crown. If you know now that your hiddenness was your authority all along, and stay close, because what rises next is not silence anymore. It is fire, and they will not be able to ignore it. Number 2, the hidden fire within. They never understood why their rejection could not destroy you, why their cruelty only seemed to sharpen your resolve. Habakkuk 2 verse 3 declares, "The vision awaits an appointed time, and your flame was waiting for that moment, preserved by God Himself. In the hidden years, when nobody called your name, the fire kept burning in silence, consuming the shame they tried to heap upon you. What looked like loneliness was the chamber of preparation, the refining furnace where gold is separated from dust. The pain they thought would end you became the oil that fed the secret lamp of your spirit." Comment, "I walk crowned by eternal flame." If you feel the fire still burning within you, and listen close, because what protected that flame was something even they could not touch. It begins subtly, almost like a weight pressing against your chest when no one else feels it. You noticed how certain rooms seemed heavier the moment you entered them, though you hadn't spoken a word. A strange resistance met you in places where you should have felt welcome, as if invisible hands pushed back against your presence. That quiet heaviness was the first sign that something in you unsettled the air around them. Long before you understood who you were, the atmosphere already knew you were marked, and everything not aligned with your purpose recognized it before you did. That discomfort was not madness. It was confirmation that your fire had been seen in the spirit long before it blazed in the natural. The pressure carved itself into your emotions, making you question your worth more times than you can count. You felt like an outsider, even in circles that were supposed to hold you. Words twisted, intentions doubted. Your heart called too much when it was only too true. Rejection did not just come once. It came in waves, pressing shame into your skin until you almost believed it belonged to you. Some nights, you wondered if something was wrong with you for caring so deeply, for carrying so heavily. Yet beneath the ache, a flicker kept telling you there was a reason for this intensity. That flicker was the fire they could not extinguish, though they tried to smother it with misunderstanding. You must see now that this pressure was not random. It was a reaction to potential. Just as Pharaoh feared the multiplying children of Israel and sought to suppress them, so too did unseen structures seek to hold you down before you rose. Wilderness, exile, delay. These were not accidents, but sacred disguises. Every chosen one has a season where their light is hidden, not because it is weak, but because it is dangerous to those who profit from shadows. Systems, people, and energies bent themselves to contain you, but their efforts only pressed you deeper into alignment. The wilderness became your sanctuary, though they mocked it as failure. And every hidden year was God's way of setting the stage for a fire that would be undeniable when revealed. Look back with new eyes, chosen one, and you will see the patterns etched clearly now. How many doors slammed just as you reached them? How many betrayals came from those you trusted most? How many times did the environment around you drain your spirit until you could hardly breathe? These were not coincidences. They were markers of a spirit too potent to be left unchallenged. Like torches in a cave, your very presence illuminated hidden things, and the darkness pushed back. They thought their lies and obstacles broke you, but in truth, they refined you. What felt like endless opposition was a silent testimony. The fire in you was real enough to be resisted. There were moments when the resistance became almost physical, as if the very air thickened around you. Fog where clarity should have been, watchers in silence, opportunities locked as if by unseen keys. You wondered why paths so simple for others became labyrinths for you. It was not incompetence, it was interference. Your flame attracted distortion, the way light always draws moths and shadows alike. But even when the doors closed, even when the fog pressed in, the fire within never went out. Instead, it grew hotter in secret, consuming what tried to choke it, biding its time for revelation. And yet, how did you respond to this unseen weight? At times you shrank, convinced it was safer to hide than to burn. At times you tried to please them, dimming yourself in hopes that the pressure would fade. At times you rebelled in silence, carrying storms inside that no one else could see. Each reaction was part of the mirror, showing you how deeply you feared standing out. The temptation to give up was real, but something deeper would not let you. That deeper thing was not stubbornness, it was covenant. Your inner fire refused to die because it was not lit by you in the first place. Here lies the revelation. Resistance was never condemnation. It was proof. They would not have tried so hard to silence you if you had not carried something worth silencing. Every scheme, every dismissal, every betrayal was a backward confirmation of your weight in the spirit. And now it is time to reclaim what was always yours. The voice you hushed must be given back to you, not as noise, but as fire that speaks without needing words. You are not what their rejection declared. You are what your survival proves. The flame endured because it was divine, not fragile. And now it demands to rise with authority. So understand this truth as it settles in your bones. You were targeted because you were powerful. The more they tried to bury you, the more the flame preserved itself in silence, waiting for the appointed time. Their rejection could not erase you. It only wrote your resilience into eternity. Comment: I move guarded by divine fire. If you know this word belongs to you, and let the world see your agreement with heaven's decree. Share a memory, a dream, or a moment where you felt this resistance, because your testimony is part of the flame. And know this: what comes next is not the same kind of hidden fire. What comes next is unveiling, when the shield that covered you becomes the blaze that cannot be denied. Number 3, the unseen shield. When you thought you were hidden, it was not neglect, it was protection. Psalm 27 verse 5 says, "He will hide me in his shelter in the day of trouble," and that hiding was your shield. They could not find you because heaven covered you. They spoke your name in malice, but their curses fell back on their own heads, for you were sealed in light. Every delay was a wall built by angels to keep you from snares that would have crushed you too soon. You survived not because you were lucky, but because you were marked. Comment: I rise marked by the divine. If you know you've been shielded, and share a reflection, whether a dream, a moment, or a season where you felt God hid you on purpose. Because now that shield has lifted, and what emerges cannot be denied. It often begins as a moment you cannot explain, a delay that felt unfair, a door you thought you needed to walk through, but somehow could not. At the time, it seemed like rejection or failure, but now it glimmers in your memory as divine strategy. That sudden pause, that detour, that silence was not the absence of purpose, it was its preservation. In that strange tension, heaven was folding you into itself, wrapping you in a garment no enemy could pierce. You thought you were merely overlooked, but in truth you were sealed. Psalm 27 verse 5 whispered it long before you could see it. He will hide me in his shelter in the day of trouble. What you once mistook for abandonment was in fact the unseen shield keeping you untouched by traps not made for your feet. There were seasons where you looked around and wondered why everyone else seemed to be moving while you remained still. You felt like the world was passing you by, leaving you behind in shadows you never asked for. Friends advanced, opportunities unfolded for others, and you carried the ache of invisibility. But what if invisibility was a mercy rather than a curse? Hiddenness spared you from snares that would have destroyed you before you even knew your own name. Those days of silence became your shield, guarding your flame from winds that would have extinguished it too soon. The weight you felt pressing against you was not punishment. It was protection written into your story. They called your delays weakness, but heaven knew them as armor. Like Joseph kept in a pit before he was lifted to a palace, You were guarded from being exposed too early. There were conversations about you in rooms you never entered, plans made to mock or discard you. Yet none of them reached you. Their curses fell back on their own heads, because the shield stood firm between you and their malice. You were not spared because you were fragile, but because your fire was not yet ready to be revealed. The hidden shield became the veil of consecration, protecting what was sacred until the appointed hour. Even the silence around your name was part of a strategy written in eternity. Look back now, and you will begin to see the fingerprints of this shield all along your journey. The job you didn't get that would have bound your soul. The relationship that ended abruptly, sparing you years of spiritual suffocation. The sudden move, the unexpected ending. The pause that left you in tears but kept you safe. Each moment looked like loss, but was in fact survival. You were not forgotten. You were concealed in a pavilion of light. Even the nights you lay awake in confusion. Heaven's shield was holding back storms that never touched you. What once felt like emptiness was actually the full weight of divine covering. There is a mystery in the way light works. It does not only reveal, it also blinds. Your enemies could not track you, because heaven made you untraceable. Their eyes sought you but saw only shadows. Their schemes reached out but touched only air. Like the prophet Elisha, surrounded by unseen horses and chariots of fire, you two were never truly alone. You were hidden in plain sight, and their malice scattered like smoke against the wind. What shielded you was not luck or chance, but covenant, ancient and unbreakable. And every step you thought was hesitation was actually heaven's choreography, keeping your path clean for the unveiling. But the shield did more than protect you from enemies. It protected you from yourself. Had every opportunity opened, had every desire been granted, you would have been exposed to battles you were not ready to fight. The hiddenness taught you patience, sharpened your discernment, and burned away illusions. It forced you to confront your own shadows, so that when the unveiling came, you would not crumble under the weight of authority. The shield was not just around you. It was within you, a discipline of silence that became strength. In stillness you were forged, in waiting you were fortified, and in secrecy you were sanctified. The one who hid you was also shaping you into a vessel of fire. Now the time comes when you begin to feel the shield lifting, and the world that could not find you before begins to notice your flame. This is not coincidence. It is divine timing. The silence that once frustrated you has prepared you for a voice that cannot be ignored. The obscurity that once felt like chains has become the platform of your authority. You survived, and survival itself is the testimony that the shield did its work. Every snare missed, every storm diverted, every unseen rescue has brought you to this exact moment of emergence. You were hidden to be revealed, preserved to be proclaimed. So let this truth settle into your spirit. Chosen one, you were not neglected, you were preserved. The unseen shield was the evidence that your life carried too much weight to be exposed too soon. Comment, I walk hidden yet never lost. If you know this word is for you, and share the dream, the memory, or the moment where you felt heavens covering over your path. Your testimony strengthens not only you, but the community walking this same journey. And remember, revelation is not the conclusion, but the invitation. The lifting of the shield is not the end of your story, but the doorway into the fire waiting to be unveiled. What comes next is not hiding, but rising. And when you rise, no shadow will be able to deny it. Number 4, the revealing flame. The moment has come when what was hidden in silence must now blaze forth. 1 Kings 19 verse 12 reminds us that Elijah did not hear God in the fire or the wind, but in a gentle whisper. Yet when the whisper ended, his authority shook nations. Your rising is not loud, it is undeniable. They cannot deny the glow in your eyes, the weight in your voice, the way rooms change when you walk in. What they mocked as defeat has become the proof of divine elevation, the very ground on which you now stand tall. Comment, "I anchor this truth in my soul," if you feel your unveiling stirring, and share what part of your story has now become your strength. Because chosen one, this flame will not remain hidden any longer. A whisper becomes a fire not by accident, but by design. There comes a moment when the quiet that once sheltered you begins to tremble with heat, as if every sealed prayer is suddenly catching flame. You sense it not in noise, but in weight. The atmosphere shifts when you enter, and the unseen bends around your presence. What was once fragile in you has become unshakable, like iron forged in silence. Every hidden night of weeping has turned into oil, fueling a blaze that cannot be contained. 1 Kings 19 verse 12 reminds us that God was not in the thunder nor in the earthquake, but in the gentle whisper. And from that whisper Elijah walked with authority that changed nations. In the same way, chosen one, the flame within you is now breaking its silence. Do you remember how they mocked your stillness, saying nothing would come of your restraint? That mockery has become the altar of your unveiling, the evidence that their eyes were never meant to measure your worth. They expected you to roar, to fight with noise, to prove yourself in the ways of the world. Instead, you held your ground with a patience they could not understand, and heaven has turned that patience into a fire too holy to touch. The very ground where they thought you had fallen has now become the stage of your rise. What they mistook for failure was only the wick being prepared for light. And now, every ember hidden in silence begins to glow. There is a mystery in fire. It consumes, yet it also reveals. As the flame of your destiny rises, it burns away illusions, stripping falsehood until only truth remains. Those who lied about you will find their words collapsing in the glow of your presence. Those who doubted your anointing will have to admit the shift they feel when you stand before them. This is not arrogance, it is alignment. Your energy no longer negotiates with deception. Your unveiling is the fire that separates what is of God from what was merely shadow. And in that separation, you begin to see who you always were. The revealing flame is not loud, yet it commands. You may not raise your voice, but your presence speaks louder than 1,000 arguments. Rooms shift when you enter, not because of anything you say, but because the atmosphere bends to the fire carried in your silence. That weight you feel in your chest is not heaviness, it is authority, the kind that rests on prophets, guardians, and seers. It is the mantle of those who endured shadows only to emerge unburned. Like Moses descending with a face that glowed from the mountain, you carry light no darkness can veil, and this light cannot be hidden anymore. Think of every moment you thought was wasted, every delay that seemed like denial. They were not wasted, they were fuel. Every disappointment became a log on the fire, every betrayal a spark that only pushed the blaze higher. What others meant for harm was converted into holy kindling, preserved for this very hour. The fire that could have consumed you has instead anointed you. Now, what burned you yesterday has become the light guiding your tomorrow. You survived because the fire was never meant to destroy you, it was meant to reveal you. The flame is not only for you, it is for the world that will see it and know. The chosen are never lit for themselves alone. They become beacons, torches carried through generations, signals to those still trapped in the shadows. Your rising is not private anymore. It is generational. The ancestors who endured silently now breathe through your unveiling, their sacrifices turning into sparks of your authority. When you blaze, you are not alone. You are part of a lineage of light that refuses to be extinguished. The fire you carry is both testimony and prophecy, proof that heaven never abandons its chosen ones. Chosen one, today you were reminded that your silence was never empty. It was the forge of your hidden fire, now breaking chains they thought would last forever. Subscribe if you haven't yet, like this video, and comment, "I am chosen to let this message anchor in your soul." Your silence was fire. Now let it burn.